Whoa, we're live. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Mad Mamluks podcast. My name is Sim. Along with me is Mort. I always want to call you Buffalo Mort, like Buffalo Bill, but how y'all doing? I hope
Yo, what's up, guys? Assalamu alaikum.
thank you for joining us this evening, everyone. Let's give a quick shout out to our sponsors before we start rambling away. All right. halfardeen.com, the private matrimonial website. You know anyone looking to get married, maybe yourself, go to halfardeen.com. Once you get married and everything's balls rolling, start up your career, got some money going, you want to invest that stuff in a halal, Sharia compliant manner, go to Wahed&nbsp. And lastly, when you acquired that wealth, you want to make sure your loved ones have the security in place that in the unfortunate event that you leave the earth, you want to make sure that your wealth is distributed in a Sharia compliant manner. Go to mywasiya.com, get your Islamic compliant or Sharia compliant will made in as little as 15 minutes. All right. Well,
Alrighty, good
we were
stuff.
late again this week. One of these days we'll get it right. Unfortunately, there's a lot of technical stuff that we have to sort through um, before we launch these episodes. A lot of times, what happens is that we're doing podcasts on the weekend as well, so there'll be in studio guests that will come, and we have to change the entire configuration for those in studio guests um, so that we can
Yep,
record with them, right? So
absolutely.
when we switch over here to live, it kind of causes a lot of confusion in terms of how everything was configured before. I hope that makes sense. Probably doesn't, but don't worry. It's all stuff that's very technical and boring. But we hope you all had a great weekend. And, today is an unfortunate day for me. I, I think someone who I looked up to since I was a kid passed away, Stan Lee. My son is as well. He's really into comic books and stuff, so he was really sad about it. I told him, look, it'll be all right, but it was just, I'm lying. He was really actually consoling me. I was crying on his shoulder. No, but listen, Stanley was great, man, because he made like legendary comic book figures, right? I mean, Spider Man, the X Men, all that. You know, these characters were characters that formed your worldview on what justice is. And um, I think a lot of a lot of the initial frame of thought about bringing peace to the world and bringing prosperity and making sure that no one is oppressed in the world. These kind of ideas start coming from childhood when you start reading comic books, right? You want to be the hero. You want to make a difference. You want to make sure that there's no one who is uh, oppressed. And you always hear kids saying no fair, no fair, but they really are talking about justice, right? When you hear little kids quarreling. But I don't know, it kind of struck home in that respect. We knew that he was going to go any day. He was 95 years old, right? I mean, but it's sad.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. I think he was. I mean, he definitely was an icon for us growing up. I mean, even though we probably most of us didn't really know his name, but we were very familiar with his works.
Yeah,
And I think in some way, Marvel probably influenced us in some way growing up, especially if you were in the 80s
right.
and maybe I mean I remember comic book collection or collecting was a big thing back when you were little, right? You would
Yeah,
trade comic books and Sunday morning cartoons and stuff like that, right? We would watch um and I think that the cool thing about it was that he was able to bring in um social issues that people couldn't necessarily talk about in public and kind of bring that into the comic book. like into the comic book world,
Yeah.
right? And he was able to use like his writing expertise and story narratives to maybe talk about or challenge some of these social issues. We don't think about it right now, but if you look at it back in the days and you look at it, you read some of the scripts from the comic books, you'll see that it is a challenge to some social ideas that were present at that time. And it's
Yeah, I
pretty.
mean, look at the X-Men, right? The X-Men were like something that was really close to my heart. And Mort, me and you went to a private school that really looked like Xavier's school. If anyone's heard of CPSA from Chicago, it it doesn't look as huge as the X-Men, but it had like the ivy and it had the brown brick building, had the
Like now
look.
they cleaned it up,
Yeah,
but when we first got there, remember the first day when they had just opened, I'm talking about there was like still like old floors, old windows. They hadn't cleaned anything. Remember that nurse's office that had like a creaky wood floor? It looked like something from Harry Potter. Like you
yeah.
walk up there, like it was very like beat
It
down.
was so weird. Man, I wish I could show internal pictures of the layout of this building, but yeah, as Mort said, like there's two floors, and then the second floor had another stairway that just had no other purpose but to go to this nurse's office, and like you're thinking, who designed this? What was the purpose of this room before? It could have been like an administrative room. Maybe the head honcho, the principal, may have occupied that office before. But man, again, and whenever we talk about CPSA, that hope opens up a can of worms. We were some really nasty kids in
Yeah.
terms of,
So,
oh my
so,
gosh.
so in case people don't remember, but remember there were a few teachers. I think the one of the very first teachers that me and Sim had, I still remember his name. His name was Dr. Freihart, and pretty much our class, mine and Sim's class, got that guy fired a week later after school opened. Because remember, he was supposed to be our physics teacher, and
Yeah.
this was like monumental because we were like seventh graders, right? And we were going to be having this advanced curriculum. We are going to learn physics and chemistry and algebra, and we were going to be ahead of all those high schoolers. And so he comes in and he tries to say something so profound. And mind you, this guy was very weird looking. He had very thick glasses, and he actually wore a lab coat. I mean, if you think about all the time, do you remember that? It
Yeah.
looked like he was some kind of evil scientist. He had this lab coat all the time. And so one day, we were arguing with him. We didn't want to settle down. And he goes, look, 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 you may hate me and I may hate you, but we're all physically attracted to each other. Right. And he was obviously talking about science, right?
Yeah.
Like, but we're like, oh, he's gay. And
So horrible, man. Horrible. I mean, look, we were listeners. We were like 12 and 13
yeah, we
or
were little
14
kids.
years old. We
Not
were
even
just
14. We were
stupid.
12, literally, like
Yeah.
11 and 12. Yeah, seventh and eighth. I mean, we were young.
And there was this one moment, one of probably the most funniest moment, at least that just stands out for me, is when we put all of our bedroom posters up in our room, in our classroom. So everyone had a dedicated classroom, like fourth, fifth, and sixth, and so on. They all had dedicated classrooms. And one day we just wanted to prank the teachers and take all our posters from our bedrooms and just hang them up on the walls of this room. And literally every inch of this room was occupied by a poster. And so some teachers would walk in throughout the day and they're like, what the heck did you guys do? Like, well, and they wanted to be cool. There were some cool teachers that they didn't want to make a big deal about it. But man, that moment when the principal walked in, he at first he was just like, what are you guys doing? What's going on? I think he just came to talk to the teacher about, some, it was usually about like somebody who didn't pay their bill or they didn't pay their tuition for the month. And he ends up like pausing and he says, what the hell did you all do here? Oh man, it
So
was horrible.
I'm gonna highlight a few stories. I think Sim forgot these, but
Yeah.
so do you remember Mr. Schultz, the English teacher, the literary
Oh,
English literature
yeah,
teacher?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So do you remember what we did to him? Remember we opened those industrial staples and we put him in his chair. So when he would sit down, like he would he would like plop down on this chair. And mind you, like we didn't have official furniture. Whatever furniture we had was donated. So you had like these old school waiting room chairs that teachers would sit on. And so we had decided that we were gonna punish him, and we got like these industrial staples and opened them up, and like we planted them in like these foam seats, and he just plops down on the seat, and he just springs up, runs out of the room, and literally you can see like blood spots on his back, like on his or his
So,
rear end. I mean,
oh, there
what
was
about
this
wait?
one.
What about
There,
Miss Boer? Remember Miss Boer,
no,
the
no,
English teacher?
don't mention the names. Who knows who's watching, man? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, we're kids.
Anyway, yeah. But remember that one teacher that who was like a Catholic preacher or something? He ended up coming in to teach
Mr.
English class.
Lockie?
No, no, no. He was an English guy. He was a younger dude, around probably 30.
Oh
And
yes.
I remember this one time where like uh, one of the I think he was one of these walkers, right? He would walk through the rows of the classroom, and one of the dudes he took a highlighter and he made this huge highlighter like huge circle on his pants without him noticing. He just keep on like filling it and filling every time he'd walk by. He'd just keep filling it and more, and all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden. Well, he went back to his chalkboard or whatever to write some more, and one of the kids is like points out to him like, "Hey, so and so." I can't remember his name. Let's just call him Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith, your pants full of highlighter. It's got a big giant circle. He's like, "Whoa! How did this happen?" It was so funny because
Dude, we had this one cool teacher who was a history teacher, Mr. Lockie. Remember him?
yeah,
He was amazing. I mean, we didn't get him now, but he was like this huge American history buff.
yeah,
And like, I mean, I think he was well overqualified for that school, but he came to teach. But he was massively obese. Okay. And but he had the coolest relics. Like he had like Confederate hats and things like Civil War, like historical items. So the thing about him is that he was very also straightforward. Like he would treat us like, like typical old school teacher, like private school teacher.
yeah.
And he would like wipe his nose and like slam his hand down on the tables in front of you, right? And like, what are you doing? Like it's just really grimy, right? So we all,
Every nose hairs coming
yeah,
out like an inch or so.
yeah. I mean, this guy, he had no care about a world in the world about how he looked like. He would wear all sorts of clothes. I think he literally just woke up out of bed and came to school. Like, didn't care
Yeah,
about brushing his teeth, shaving, nothing. Um, but so me and Sim, and there was another guy, a friend of ours in the class who died a long time ago, like Ali Abbas, remember him? So we were sitting in the front seat, and we decided that we were gonna loosen. So we didn't actually have desk. We had like foldable tables as our desk
yeah.
because this is all like donated furniture. So so we decided to bend the legs in so that when he would put his hands on the table, he would fall forward. And so we all remember to put our feet away from it. And lo and behold, he's catching us talking to each other, and he was going to slam his hands down on the table. And he goes, boom. And next thing you know, he just comes tumbling forward, like through from the front end of the class to the back, like a bowling ball. And we were like, what? We didn't expect that at all. I mean, to just put it frank, dude, we were troublemakers. Like we were little
I mean,
shayateen.
we were talking about Xavier and his school of gifted students. We were like the opposite. I mean, we were like gifted in
Gifted the
in
wrong
all
way.
the wrong ways. I mean,
Yeah.
we actually, so we all I think came from public schools, and when you finally were um, the bleep in the school, you wanted to think of innovative ways to cause havoc, and I think everyone was just trying to outdo each other and trying to figure out a way to just get your social cred at a high level by these pranks.
Oh
It
yeah.
was crazy.
Yeah, it was. I mean, but let's talk about this for a moment. A moment though. One thing I remember about being in that school though is that I think being part of that school though, it kind of led to that definitely shaped our identity going forward. The fact that we were around like everyone was Muslim for maybe like a good portion, like 3-4 years of our life.
Yeah.
um I don't want to say that it was like that we didn't like non-Muslims, but it was refreshing to be around all your own people, right? And it kind of gave you this confidence to be a Muslim outside. right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt because me and Sim both ended up going to a public high school after that. Like we went to different high schools, we went different paths.
Yeah. Oh,
But we,
before you
yeah,
get there, CPSA had the best teachers. I mean, they had people from the Fermi Lab coming and teaching. I don't know how
Mr.
they managed to
Bucks.
pull the strings. Yeah, Allah yarhamu. He they got the best teachers to come and teach us, and we just put it all away. You know,
Yeah, by the way,
we
shout out to Dr. Salim, the guy who started the school. This guy literally was a physician that made a lot of money, and people don't give him enough credit.
yeah.
We used to tease him a lot, but literally the guy gave up, like, I mean, at this time, I mean, maybe in today's time, he could have been a multi-millionaire, but he gave up practices
He
and buildings
he
to
gave up
literally,
everything
yeah,
to buy the school.
to fund the school. It got to a point where he wasn't even making money. It wasn't even sustaining itself. He literally moved his family into the school.
Yeah,
They lived there, and they literally suffered and endured that, with
yeah,
him. I mean, but to his ending, he had a good ending. I mean, he went to perform Umrah and he actually died in Saudi Arabia. He was buried in Mecca.
yeah.
So, which is, I mean, obviously, they say the ending of somebody is an indication that Allah is pleased with him. But he literally gave up everything he did for the school. And I mean, as I grew up older now, I recognize and appreciate
Yeah.
what he did.
I
Uh,
wish we had an award that we could give him, man. I wish, like, those posthumous awards but there's nothing that could really.
Honor
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
the sacrifice he did is just unparalleled. No one in this community has done has made the sacrifices that he has. It's
Yeah,
just
but to be honest, when we were younger, we didn't really like him because he had this really old school mentality. I'll give you a small example. Like I was always in trouble because of the stuff we used to do. So we had detention, and basically detention was simply my parents didn't mind detention so much because they would keep me there till 5 o'clock, and so they could pick me up after work. It was great for them, but I was always in detention, and so I was hungry. So I'm like, hey, I got some pizza. I got some money, Doctor Steve. I'm ordering some pizza. Can you just go pick it up for us? We can't leave the school, right?
yeah.
So we go, sure. He takes the money and he comes back with his pita bread with like ketchup and like mozzarella cheese on top of it. And we're like, what is this, dude? And like he had, I mean, he obviously was, I'm sure he had a good use for the money, but things like that were just completely like, and this is how chaotic the school was. But
Well,
it was all beginning, you know what I mean? It was what led to the foundation today.
so fast forward when we do end up going to high school, we're just killing it. Me and Mort are like people of average intelligence. We're not like
I'm
excuse
stupid.
me, sir, and
Yeah.
actually the theoretical equation of blah blah blah. We're not those people. Okay, we're pretty average students. And probably bottom of the barrel in that school. But when we went to public schools, we killed it. I mean, we're just like, you guys are playing with like, it seemed like they were playing with those Duplo Legos. The kids who aren't very bright, they get to play with the Duplo.
The big ones that would
Yeah,
get you
and
like trying to figure it out.
all the smart regular kids would get the regular Legos, and that's what I thought of high school. I thought like these guys are morons. They
Actually,
don't.
you know what I remember? The book that we had when we registered in high school, and I went to South, which was supposedly higher than the other Glenbards, right?
Yeah,
Curriculum wise. But when I went there, they were like, "Oh, you could probably do AP chemistry," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure. AP physics, AP chemistry, AP biology," and the books that we were doing as eighth graders was what they were teaching for AP biology and chemistry.
yeah,
Literally the same. I already had the books. Because
yeah,
remember that yellow chemistry book and that green biology book?
yeah,
That's exactly what we were using as part of the curriculum there. So that goes to show you that like we were far advanced. Like we were really dumb at CPSA. Like
yeah,
we were like the losers there. But when we got to like high school, we were like the stars because we were like, hey, we already know this stuff, right? It's just
yeah.
kind of like we already memorized it, kind of, But and to be honest, right now CPSA does a good job. I'm sorry, because apparently they place very well, like in terms of like placing into Ivy League schools or top schools and
Yeah,
ACT and
they're
PT
one of the
scores.
highest ranked schools in Illinois.
Yeah, so I mean, good, awesome. But yeah, I think we talked about the
But
youth enough. Yeah,
anyway, it was just when you talk about the X-Men and things like that, and
yeah,
the X-Men are really a lot of Muslims have they find a lot of similarities in how they were raised, and how the situation was when they were young and growing up in primarily white suburbs, right? It was not as multicultural as it is today, right? And I think well, you kind of found some solace when you were reading those comics, and you found things that you could identify with, well, with a lot of the characters that Stan Lee made, you know. But
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, let me just answer this question. Like, what was that cause CPSA gave you foundation? My kids left CPSA after 2 years at public school. Is a breeze for them, mashallah. If it, yeah, I mean, I think CPSA gave me a solid foundation as a Muslim identity. I mean, and as far as intellectually, yes, I mean, we did study stuff that we probably wouldn't have studied if we were in regular school. Definitely.
but again, our experience is from so many years ago, what 20 years ago or whatever, right? Or 25 years ago.
Yeah,
But
I think
we
this
don't we
person
don't
said
we,
that
we
her
don't know
kids
what
are
it
also
is
in
like
school.
now.
Yeah, no, her kids were also in the school, and then
Okay.
they left, and now they excelled in regular school too, like
Okay.
a public school. So I think that's pretty consistent with what we experienced. They definitely do have a better curriculum than most public schools. I think they strive to do that. Um, but I think for me, for us, me and Sim, it was probably more of a cultural, like a culture building, religious building experience,
Yeah.
identity building, in that sense. Like we were that really helped me in the future. But regarding going back to the comic book things, one of the things I always noticed as a child, well, I think it was natural for me to gravitate towards superheroes because I mean, naturally, every child loves someone who's strong and powerful, but for us, we also had like the Sahaba that kind of we had already these figures that were kind of like like in our minds like superpower. I mean, they had like these amazing talents, right? And so it was like a natural thing. Like you would kind of look at them, view them maybe. Like as a kid, you're like, oh, I'm familiar with this concept that we have these awesome people that can stop evil, and like go
Yeah.
around, right? So it kind of made it more like we could, I guess, relate to it a little bit more. And I think nowadays you have like younger people who are taking that concept and making like Muslim heroes. Like they're actually like trying to make Muslim superheroes and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that,
I
which are
actually met with
awesome.
some creators who are working on making y- some comics as well. And I know there are Muslim comic book creators all over the world, but well, I just happened to meet some through this podcast, and they're like, this is what we're planning on doing, and they showed me some of the scripts that they came up with and some of the characters. I'm like, this is fantastic, and
Yep, awesome.
we'll definitely promote them as they as they come to their launch date.
Yep,
So
awesome. So just one real quick thing, or one quick question to wrap up around CPSA. But someone asked this question: would you recommend to go back to CPSA if you could stay in public? If I could stay or stay in public, I don't want my children to be sheltered. They're seventh and fifth graders currently. You know,
well,
Sim is a parent.
let me take a
Yeah,
shot at this because I get this question a lot, and every parent has to assess their child case by case basis. If anyone is telling you this is what you need to do with your kid, they're completely are talking out of their butt. They don't know. They just weren't. They've never had much experience with raising different types of children, or their experience with children is very limited. They, each child, you'll notice, has their own characteristics, and they're innate from the moment of birth. There's nothing that you could change about it. There's just a set of characteristics that they're born with, and you have to figure out whether your kid can be able to withstand some of the pressures that come with public school, and if they can actually hold on to some of their Islamic principles throughout the school year, and how quickly will they, or are they trying to um, how quickly will they let go
assimilate.
of a principle to find more friends, right? And I think just as a parent, it's been a journey with my girls, and I've been looking at each one of them and trying to figure out, okay, well, are they holding on? I also don't just you know I don't put faith in just my own prognosis or my own diagnosis on how these girls can handle school, but I also, be a parent, and I look up what they're doing on the internet, and I want to make sure that their ideas and their thoughts are in the right place, and I don't, you gotta do the work at home as well. You got to make sure that you're not exposing them to things that they're not exposed to. Like if you're going to be showing your kids R-rated movies, sitting down watching with them, well, guess what happens in R-rated movies? A lot of sex scenes happen, and then they're going to be interested in that a lot more. Now, when you put some strict limitations on what they can actually consume, then you're building the right framework within their mind. I alhamdulillah, I don't have that problem because I've been making sure that they're consuming the right sources of media, even entertainment. Even their YouTube channels. I make sure I just do a quick scroll. I'm like, hey, what's this channel about? What's that channel about? Everyone has their own account, their YouTube account, and I watch everything. So I mean, these are things that you have to do as a parent to figure out whether they can actually handle the day to day life of public school. It's not a one size fits all for everyone. For sure, I don't want my daughters to be. Um, I want them to be able to handle a lot of the struggles that happen in the workplace later on in life when you have to go out and work. You don't want them to be scared of white people or brown people or black people or whatever. You want them to, because a lot of our public school or a lot of our private schools, at least in Chicago, they're either all Arab or all Indian and Pakistani, right? There's no other private school for Muslims other than those two ethnic groups. So
Yeah, I mean, and I think this also applies towards later on in life too. Like, some kids aren't meant to go to a four-year university. Maybe some people are more built for trade schools, vocational schools. Maybe they want to be a plumber. I mean, people tend to look at, they want their children to be a certain way, but in reality, you have to know whether your child can actually fit that, the framework.
right,
I mean, it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do in college. I mean, if going back, I probably would have went right to the workforce rather than go to college. I mean, me and Sim went to college in the beginning, and we wasted a lot of time in the beginning. We just
we
kind
did.
of hung out, smoked cigarettes, and I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah, it was
You know what I
horrible.
mean? Like it was just, yeah. I mean, it was dumb, But we were taught that we have to go to college, finish within 4 years, and you have to do this or that. You have to pick something like that. And I think a parent nowadays needs to learn that if you do that and it doesn't work for the child, you're gonna ultimately waste their time and
Well,
your time and
and
money.
I think you and I, Mort, were shaped much more differently than a lot of other Indian Pakistani kids who just they followed their parents' advice. We just got tired of that same thing, that same rabble of become a doctor or an engineer and stuff, and it was just like our thing was like anything but that, just to piss you off. I'm not gonna do that,
Yeah,
because we
we
got
like a
tired of
rebel
that.
kid.
Like there's so many successful people in the world, and not neither are. You can find so many ways of success without being a doctor or an engineer, right? So
Yeah.
that was something
Remember,
that
we,
really
we always
upset
used to tell
us.
our dad, "Do you know Bill Gates is a college dropout?" Like, we always used to say that.
Everyone said that. Yeah, every dropout had
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but anyways, so let's try to move the subject if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Sim, somebody asked the Chavez, our longtime listener, asked in the room if it's okay to go to a different topic. What are your thoughts on Clinton aides saying that Hillary is likely to run again in 2020? Um,
Wow, that's
it,
a quick way to shoot yourself in the foot and just call an end to it, because there's no way the Democrats are going to win the White House, and I think there will be a backlash towards all the other races that are happening that year as well.
yeah, I mean,
Just a
I would
horrible
be.
move.
I tend to agree with Sim on this. I think if the Democrats want to lose 2020 and have Trump win again, run Hillary if you want to lose.
These people are so out of touch, man. I'm betting they're legitimately debating this because they can't think out of the box. They're so fixated in their own set of ideas. A lot of these guys are, at least the elders in the Democratic Party. They didn't even know, like, what happened. Well, remember when Breitbart was getting really popular and everything? So they're like, oh well, imagine if we had our own alternative news for liberal news, and everyone's like, wait, what? You guys have like Vice, you have the Young Turks, you have um,
The AP stuff. I mean,
the
I mean, yeah.
Intercept. You have like 10 different outlets for that. You're so out of touch.
Yeah, like didn't the HuffPost start off for that too in the beginning? I mean, it was like
The
that too.
HuffPost, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is that look, um, the problem I think the Democrats are going to have is this, and it's very simple. Their entire argument so far has been Trump is bad, Trump is evil, Trump is the devil, but they haven't been able to provide any alternative faces to compete against Trump,
Yeah.
right? Actually, if you want to get down to the core of it, Trump's wish, I mean, Democrats wish they had a Democratic Trump. They wish they had someone like that that could motivate their entire base, but they don't have one. And right now, I mean, they were talking about running Biden, they're talking about running O'Malley, Hillary Clinton. I mean, the same people, the same losers that lost are going to go again. You know what I mean? Like, it's do not learn from your mistakes. People just don't like Hillary Clinton,
Yeah.
right? Now, Bernie Sanders, he may be an option, but I don't know if the guy wants to run. Maybe he lost his momentum, his fever, especially it's a different climate right now when you have a bunch of people that are kind of on the fence about Trump and what he's doing. I think maybe the momentum is not exactly there anymore. So let's move to the next thing. What do you guys think of 2 Muslim women elected to Congress?
Oh, Abdullah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like
So
that. I can't believe we completely glossed
yeah,
over
I don't know
that.
how we forgot about that. That just goes to show there's a patriarchy on the show. Like we don't care about women's things at all. No, I'm just I'm
No,
just kidding.
I mean,
No, but
go ahead.
you want to take that one? No,
No,
take
no.
it. Go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, Rashida Tlaib. At first a lot of people were excited about her. I was excited, and then we found out that she is funded by J Street, which is an Israeli lobbying group, and it's not as bad as some of the other ones, but it's definitely a Zionist-backed lobbying group. And she made very neutral statements. She started making tweets about how she believes in the two-state solution, blah blah blah. I mean, this is the problem that we're facing in this country. That especially as Muslims, that we're being fed one word, one voice to us, and then in public the candidate says something else, like completely against what we hold to be true, at least in terms of Muslim rights and what we value, at least in terms of foreign policy that the United States is implementing across the world. And then you also
I don't want to let you go on this because there is a problem with this. You were right. She did support this, and J Street to give her money, but they ended up retracting their support of her because of her policies over to endorse.
This happened after Electronic Intifada blew the cover on this whole story,
yeah.
right? And then all this happened, and what I imagine really happened was she probably just messaged them and said like, hey, look, I'm getting a lot of blowback from my community. Can we do something else, another way of endorsement or maybe helping out my campaign? Because she hasn't made any anti-Israeli or Zionist statements since.
True. The only thing she said is that I don't want a two-state solution. It should be, returned back to their land. Now, I think, to be honest, this is bigger than just this issue, because this is only a symptom of what would happen. Now, look, do I think that Muslims getting involved in politics is a good thing? Yes, we have to have it on some level. But I think that Muslims should also be not confused about what's happening, right? Muslim politicians who are engaging in American politics will definitely have to compromise some of their values. So you have to know that while it may be an accomplishment, they may aid us in certain areas, we cannot blanketly support and say, oh, yeah, great, she's a Muslim and now we have to support everything she does. No, politics is a very dirty game in America, right? Everybody knows that. So you should expect to be let down by some of these people, right? Because it's just a natural thing, right? So while it may be a good thing in a sense that we have a Muslim name in Congress, we have identity, someone from a background. Sure, like Ilhan Omar.
Look,
is another example, but
here's the thing: everyone needs to understand that if you can have every single member of Congress be a Muslim, but things, at least in terms of foreign policy of the United States, will not change an inch because of these candidates. I mean, you can have the president himself be a Muslim, and it just can't. The system does not operate that way. Okay, when you have so much money tied into these political campaigns, getting them elected, there's just no way that these politicians will go against their sponsors, the people who help them get elected.
Right. So I think people need to understand something. If Muslims, when I support Muslims getting involved in politics, What I generally encourage is Muslims on a grassroots level, like, meaning that in their communities, like aldermen, mayors, councilmen, because those are the areas that you're really going to change. When I mean politics, I mean locally because of the fact that you live here. If I think that you're going to affect change to our foreign policy, I don't believe that. Like Sim said, there's way too many people who have vested interest, many lobbies and companies that have vested interest in the Middle East and in the current foreign policy that we have, that it's going to take a lot more than a few congressmen and representatives to change that, right? Even a president himself couldn't change that, right? So
Trump himself wants to change things. He hasn't realized. He's just realizing since he's become a president that how expansive the executive branch is that in the sense that he can't control all the moving parts. It's just beyond him. And even the people who he's directing orders to, they refuse to comply. Like when you tell investigators to investigate something that you want investigated, and they're on the opposite end of your political spectrum, they're going to drag their feet. They won't perform the investigation in a timely fashion. They'll say like, oh, I made a phone call at 12 today, person didn't answer. Then they just drag their feet throughout the whole investigation, making sure that the whole process is as drawn out as possible. And this is what happens when you have someone who is wanting to change the system. And forget about Trump. Let's just say you have Obama 2.0, right? Somebody who is even better than Obama in every way. They just can't change it. It's only serving to protect the interests of its investors, financial investors.
Somebody who's been listening to our show for a long time was smart. He asked a question: what was the politician who interviewed you guys chucked because it wasn't good enough? We can't tell you that guy's name.
We can't tell you his name, but look, when you come out,
hold on. The reality is that this off air, he was much cooler. We talked about Jordans, we talked about so many different things, but the minute we got on air, it was like, no, don't talk about that. Don't talk about this. He literally had a man behind him he would nod off on everything that he could say and couldn't say. Right. And
yeah, he had a handler.
Yeah. It just became so boring. And the problem, it was so boring that I'm going to be honest. I've been through some very, very boring podcasts for me. Okay. There have been some very boring episodes for me personally.
Me too.
But this one by far was so boring that everybody unanimously we're gonna scrap this, and it got to the point where I think even that guy knew that, because he didn't even reach out to us and be like, "Hey, what happened to the podcast?" Like he just kind of let it go. It was that bad.
And we told him like this is not one of those, this is not like Radio Islam. You're not going to be coming here and talking. Here's the microphone for you to talk, and then here's the microphone for me to talk, and we're going to have an interesting, erudite discussion about the politics that affect our lives. It's just not that kind of a program. We just want to get to know.
We want to get to know you, the person behind this. Like, what are you about? Let's have a candid conversation about it.
Share some experiences. Share some life lessons, wisdoms that you've learned through, all the hardship that you have to endure in a political campaign. At least give us that much. But it was nothing. It was just all like cookie cutter answers that you would give to the media, and it was just like, no.
Yeah, so I will say this though, in a positive light though. One thing is that it does help to bolster the Muslim identity in America, that there are Muslim names in politics, and it kind of makes it harder for people to become racist towards Muslims or prejudiced, I should say, right? Because of the fact that they're more familiar. I hope, inshallah, they do some good. God protect them from anything. Allah protect them from any evil they're going to do or may have to do. But unfortunately, that comes with the territory, right? If their intention is to do good, I hope they can do whatever they want to. Some of these people are genuinely like wanting to better their community, because look, Ilhan Omar comes from Minnesota, which is there's a heavy Somali population there. So I'm sure she can do some of her people good.
But again, in terms of Islam and theology, don't expect much.
Yeah,
they don't expect anything like she's gonna work for Islamic rights or
Yeah.
don't expect any of that.
Basically, there's no
What
sneaking
you've
Sharia
only
in.
earned, you have to understand your expectation. You've earned, or you've allowed a Muslim woman who is in hijab to be in a position of power and authority and more visibility towards the hijab in terms of um, social acceptance. You want you look, as a father of $3, I want to make sure that my daughters are, when they wear hijab, they're not seen as somebody who's foreign, right? Or who's somebody who can be a threat to anyone. And in that respect, if that's what all that your aim is that, hey, I got a Muslim woman who looks or who's wearing a hijab in office, in a public or in a public environment where a lot of people see that this is a very harmless person, a person who means no harm to the American community at large, then that's what you've accomplished. And
Yep. So there's no fear for sneaking Sharia into the courts. Nothing's gonna happen like that. Don't worry. Don't get excited. So let's do this. Let's take a few more of these questions, and I think we should probably wind down. It's like almost we're done with our session here, right? Almost pretty much. So let's take a few more questions.
yeah,
Um, so people are saying, well, what about Canada? There's a good example of Muslims in Canada who have been involved politically there, and they've made some there's no improvement there. Yes, I agree, but me being an American and also like living in Canada for a little while and like working and going there often, um, you can definitely see that Muslims probably have a little bit more going on there because, and I think it doesn't really have to do with the law, or it's more so that Canada is only 30 million people and majority of them are immigrants and Muslims are heavily populated in Toronto, right? I mean, like majority of the Muslims live in Toronto, whereas in America we are kind of spread out, right? Like we're all over the country, all over 50 states. And so I think if Muslims were, for example, let me make the equivalent. If Muslims were to come into like or somebody were to come in Jackson Heights in New York, or into like Buffalo where there's tons of Muslims, or in Lombard or Chicago where there's tons of Muslims, you're gonna see more tolerance and more prevalence of or more Muslim friendly areas, right? It's naturally going to happen. But now, if you go down to let's say where Sim's better half is from, Arkansas, you better hope to God that you just don't get caught in the street, right? I mean, it's just
no, actually, they're very friendly people. It's all a bunch of nonsense that you
yeah,
hear
yeah.
on the
Sim is
news.
just being nice to
No,
me.
no,
Yeah.
I'm serious, man. It's great.
No, I'm
There's
kidding.
going to
You're
be
right.
bad
No,
apples in every society, but when I go, we're in Chicago, and you go to some of the southern suburbs of Chicago, watch. It was so scary after 9/11. There are people like who are driving around masjids with Confederate flags, and it was horrible. Like,
yeah, yeah.
no,
No,
the
I
South
agree.
is great.
No, I mean, like, so generally, what I've noticed about the South is this: that they are very opinionated. But once you get to know them, they're okay. But
Yeah,
if they don't know you, they can come off very racist to you. But that's, I mean, but I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying though is that you don't see that stuff normally in areas like Chicago or Toronto or New York City or LA. You just don't see it because they're more multicultural and there are heavy populations of Muslims there. Okay, so let's see this. How do you guys look at scholars like Sheikh Omar Suleiman aligning with activists? Okay, so one of the things we try to do on the show is we don't try to name people like particularly like this because we don't want to get in the
look, I
fallen
mean,
trap of slandering anybody,
knock down the
right?
ideas. Not We don't need to knock down the person, but in general, you guys listen to the podcast. You know our thoughts about that kind of stuff. We don't feel that you need to align with any type of political group, whether it's left wing, super right wing. We talk about whatever aligns with Islam, where will be in affirmation with, and we'll stand behind. If the Republicans or the conservatives call for an end to abortion, we'll be aligned with that. If the liberals will be talking about universal health care, or some resolving some of the income disparities in society, we'll be aligned with that. So there's various issues on both sides of the argument that we're going to be supporting, and that's what our vision is. And I think it's making sense to more and more people. We don't play politics like that. I mean,
I think the key word is we don't play identity politics, right?
Any kind
We
of
simply,
politics.
yeah. I mean, but this is the main problem. What people who agree with that point of view, they want to say, okay, you're a Muslim, you have these boxes to check off, right? You have these excuses and these preset issues that you can champion for. For I think what we're saying in the podcast here at the Mad Mamluks is, like Sim just said, there are issues we align with and issues that we disavow from, right? Completely. And we're not going to make alliances based on fear or or the notion of self-preservation or just whatever ideas you may have. If it falls in line with Islam, we're okay with it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, we're not okay with it. And I think it's really that simple, right?
And two, we were just talking about Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar or whatever. We had other people who are, pretty well known who were interested in coming on our podcast, and we told them, like, look, this is what we're about. Not like super liberal or super conservative. We're about what is aligning with Islam and what is the truth, and this is what our vision is. And I told them, like, hey, look at these podcast episodes. These are controversial episodes that we've had on our program, and you have to know that before you want to come on our show. Because I mean, look, does politicians want to make sure that they reach as many people, the Muslim community, as possible, and they know that we have a pretty large audience, and they want to make sure that they get all the donors they can from the Muslim population in this country. And my feeling is like, okay, that's fine, but you don't want to tank your campaign at the same time. So know what you're getting into. So there
because we're going to challenge you, right? We're definitely going to challenge you.
It's not just you challenge, but we bring many different perspectives from across.
But that's what I mean. It's going to be a challenge to your positions, meaning that we're not just going to sit back idly and say what you want. It's not an open mic where you can just say what you want to say, right? There's going to be feedback, right? And I think a lot of people think that guests on our shows, like typical shows, it's mainly catered to their, a platform for them. But we've kind of created a platform for Muslims, right? So stuff that many different views or people will be saying, we try to echo those points forward. So before we wrap this up, Sim, we have one final question. Why did you make the last episode, men up, women make me a sandwich issue? Why did you make it private?
Oh, we're trying
Did the
to
feminists
actually
get to
add.
you?
No, we're adding the audio to some of the places where they couldn't hear.
Oh, okay.
So I was experimenting with that because,
I
I'm very
thought you caved
particular.
in, Sim.
No, I'm very particular that way. I'm a perfectionist. I don't like crap going out there and then having our logo associated with it, And after that episode, I was kind of upset that the audio issues happened the way they did. And
Hey, Sim, who's Shadi Hamid?
Shadi Hamid
I forgot.
he's a guest of ours. He's a pretty large, well-known
Yes.
author that wrote the
I remember that guy.
Islamic
Yeah,
exceptionalism, and rethinking political Islam as well.
Yeah,
So he wrote those
I
two
remember
books.
that guy. Yes, he called us a conservative podcast, a Muslim podcast. Well,
And that's
okay.
fine. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not. We don't. That's not
No,
like
I mean, I'm just wondering. Yeah, I remember the guy now. I totally forgot who he was, but I remember him now. Yeah, I remember. But yeah, okay.
he's cool. I mean, he's somebody who's kind of, who identifies himself as on the left, but he's intellectually honest. He'll talk about some of the problems that the left has in terms of their discourse with the world and some of the problematic things. So he doesn't fully align with everything that's on the left, but I like that. I
That's good.
appreciate that kind
I can
of.
respect that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that kind of intellectual honesty.
I can respect that.
How many people do we talk to more that just get scared by some of the things that we talk about, and we're just like, hey, we're just talking. We're not saying that this is what we
Yeah.
believe, but this is just we're testing our ideas, and we want to make sure that we can at least defend what we hold to be core ideas of what we believe, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to be constantly challenging those ideas. Otherwise, you end up just forming an echo chamber that just you're not really. And then when you hear something outside the spectrum, you simply your core is shaken, right? Because you don't know how to address it. So I think it's important for us to challenge ourselves intellectually and to entertain other ideas and see how they work.
Speaking of core challenging your core beliefs. You remember when we were in college, you know, a lot of our transformation was going on. You know, we were trying to become more on the deen and trying to be more practicing, and we were challenging a lot of our belief. And what we did was, back then, I was following a young Hamza Sources who was on a blog, you know, responding back and forth to other, you know, other people who were challenging Islam or the belief in a creator and stuff like that. And it was just truly fascinating to see that that you know, when we were young, we challenged our beliefs so much more, so that we were able to defend what we thought to be true, right? And speaking of which, Muhammad Hijab just nailed it out of the park. Did you see any of that debate, Mort, with David Wood?
Part of it.
It was
Yeah,
great. I
part of
mean,
it. Yeah.
he just embarrassed him. If you guys
Yeah,
have a
I mean,
chance,
David
make
Wood,
sure.
to be honest, I mean, I feel bad that Muhammad Hijab had to actually sit across a lot, from a person like that. I mean, David Wood is intellectually dishonest in many ways, right? He knows what he does, but I commend Muhammad Hijab for extending that gratitude and actually coming out and offering that man an opportunity. David
Well,
Wood,
David Wood is also known for, you know, for making very insulting comments towards
of
our
course, I
religion
mean,
as
he's a
well.
known fabricator. He's. I mean, I don't want to make it. Maybe we'll talk about that at a different time
Yeah,
because I think it's kind of important on a different subject note. But it's important for Muslims to be selective in who they argue with too.
yeah.
And I'll comment on that later. Um, what do you say, Sim? We have any more time for more questions, or are we? What are we looking like?
Yeah, somebody's asking about a mixer. Yeah, we do use a mixer, but we have different configurations. For example, the live stream has a different audio quality than the podcast quality. So this week's episode, you just if you want to download it, it's with the Israr, or sorry, Asrar Ahmad. You know who Dr. Israr Ahmad is, right? The founder of
Yeah,
Tanzim Islami.
yeah.
So check that out. It's got great audio quality, and you won't see any. You'll be like, oh, this is back to regular Mad Mamluks episode. So anything with an episode number, well, actually not everything, but most of the podcast will be in very good audio quality.
Yeah, and also some of our guests don't have, they're not in studio, so they
Yeah.
don't have the same mic. So you have to keep that in mind. Plus, like Sim said, on the internet, there are, and during the live streams, there is a quality drop off because of the rendering and things like that. So just keep
Keep
that
that.
in mind.
Cool. All right, let's wrap this baby up. Make sure, guys, we have a Patreon account now. Please check it
Oh,
out.
really?
Yeah, patreon.com
Are we gonna be
slash
rich?
the Mad Mamluks. I don't know if we have 0 supporters so far, so it's kind of embarrassing,
Guys,
guys.
can you please subscribe so I can stop working? We can all stop working. I'm just kidding.
Spare some change. Come on, you guys want
We
to
got some change, man. I'm trying to get
y'all
a
want us to
cigarette,
beg?
man.
Spare some change. Come on. This is
Yeah.
expensive. This is our annual budget exceeds over $10,000, guys. Come on. This just can't keep on going on without your support.
Yeah.
Like this podcast, hit subscribe, and if you can, don't go to patreon.com slash the Mad Mamluks and
So I thought of an
donate.
idea. What if we do like a 24-hour podcast live stream, like a telethon for donations?
I don't think
What if we
anyone
just do it for 24 hours straight?
these poor kids over here who showed up, they'll be the only ones who show up. I don't know. I don't know who showed up. I thought no one would show up to these episodes. It's great that these guys
Well,
showed
we
up.
love you guys. All right.
I love you all who showed up tonight. Thank you so much.
Well, hey, Radia, why don't well, we'll answer that later on. Like what we think about Joe Rogan.
Ooh,
Yeah,
come back next week.
it's a long
That's a
question.
very long. Yeah,
Yeah.
save that.
So, well, why don't you tune in next week or even on Taboo Thursdays and we can talk about that too. But preferably Mad Mondays because you can give us.
Launch Good is something we're working on as well, but nobody wants to start a Launch Good campaign during the middle of the year. You want to wait for Ramadan or something. So
Yeah,
we'll probably do that.
we want to get it going when you guys are in high spirits and we can empty your pockets.
Yeah. All right. Let's give a shout out to halfardeen.com. Find your Islamic match on halfardeen.com. Make sure you invest in a Sharia compliant manner on Wahed&nbsp.com and get your Islamic will made in as little as 15 minutes on mywasia.com. Look at the episode description below, and you should be able to save a good chunk of money when you go to mywasia.com if you use that link. If you don't, all bets are off. Don't come to me asking for money. I ain't gonna give it to you. All right. That being said, thank you for joining us this evening. Y'all take care. We'll see you on Taboo Thursdays.
Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum.